Now, we've all been enjoying the recent run of dry weather, right? Unless you're a gardener, of course, or more crucially, a farmer. The Environment Agency was warning this week that we could be facing a summer of drought. As our Berkshire reporter Patrick O'Hagan has been finding out, when it comes to making sure the country can feed itself without empty shelves in the shops, the English weather is just one of the issues we have to deal with.
You've got to remind yourself that you're very lucky to have the sun on your back, but equally I've been praying for rain for the last 6 weeks, really. We wanted some rain to get the crops going out of the ground, and it just hasn't turned up.
George Brown grows porridge oats, spring barley and white clover on his farm near Newbury. He loves the warm weather as much as anyone, but only up to a point. This March was the driest since the spring of 1961, and there's no sign yet of the rains George says his fields need to get everything moving.
I planted all my crops, they were in the ground by the 17th of March. I had some which has been literally laying in rows, not germinated at all until the last 10 days, fortnight ago. We had a very small amount of rain. There's a certain amount of the farm which actually germinated and then died.
Dealing with Mother Nature is nothing new for farmers. The only way to get around it is to take the weather out of the equation. Here at Innovation Agritech's vertical farming facility near Bracknell, they're growing basil, coriander and salad leaves indoors on vertical panels, where every day is a perfect summer's day. These look like the standard lettuce leaves you find in a bag of mixed salad.
Yeah, they are. And for us to grow them internally, it's better to grow the leaves rather than the whole head.
But where most indoor plants are grown in water trays using hydroponics, IAG are planting theirs in individual coir plugs made of coconut, where almost no water is required.
We choose aeroponic, and because we believe that the oxygen getting to the roots is a lot better than having it stood in water. It uses 95% less than standard agriculture, and is actually 30 to 35% less in hydroponic process.
Dean says systems like these mean we can grow our own produce close to home, making it much less likely that conflicts in other parts of the world or floods or droughts in places like Spain and Morocco will leave people here short of food.
We can grow in here 365 days a year. Border closures don't then come into play. We won't have to rely on imports through whatever reason, whether that be sea, air or whatever.
No one's saying we should plant big, slow-growing crops like potatoes and carrots indoors. The economics just don't stack up. But as the war in Ukraine and consequent wheat shortage proved, our food sector can easily fall prey to events outside our control.
We saw big increases in food prices a couple of years ago. Thankfully, that food price inflation has dropped out of the system, but food prices haven't fallen. They're still high, and it's still expensive to feed yourself.
Our national security and food security are deeply entwined. And Richard says while we are doing well in some respects, we need to up our game when it comes to fruit and veg.
We're about 75% self-sufficient in things that we can produce domestically. In fruit, I think probably around about 15% self-sufficient.
Clearly, we've got some way to go on the fruit front, but would we be better off growing everything we need?
The last thing you want is to be 100% self-sufficient. Not only is it extremely difficult to achieve, but that also means that you're at the behest of the weather in your own country.
So which country is doing better in this respect? Spain? Portugal? Morocco? No, think orange. Not the fruit, but the colour. Yes, you guessed it, the land that gave us Johan Cruyff, clogs, tulips and windmills. The Netherlands.
Probably because they realised that they're a relatively small, land-poor country, and it's undoubtedly the case that the government has invested in some of those production facilities, and we've probably lagged behind that.
So they're a role model we could be following, or a role model we should be following?
I would say should be following, yeah.
Do people understand how important food is to actually
No.
security?
No.
For farmers like Liz Webster, who runs the Save British Farming Group, food security is something we ignore at our peril. She looks after 300 cattle on her farm near Swindon and says we're over-reliant on imports.
The food system in this country is broken. We have exposed ourselves to a huge deluge of imports, which is destroying home production. This is ludicrous. It's a really, really bad idea.
And she says both the current Labour and previous Conservative governments have failed to recognise that food security should always be top of the agenda.
We have Agriculture Act, which doesn't even mention food production hardly. It's all about the environment. And me as a sort of post-war baby, food as a public good is something that I grew up thinking, oh, it's all right, we've got, food is a public good, the government have to ensure that food. That's not the case anymore.
So it seems we should be doing much more to protect our farming sector. Uncertainty over the weather and rising political tensions around the world mean the need to secure our own food supplies grows ever stronger.
Jessica, we're thinking about our food more, apart from the trade deal and the threat or the promise of American beef coming in. Do you think we should be looking for self-sufficiency, though, or is that a bit of a worry?
Well, I think people are more interested in where their food comes from, and that's a really positive change. According to DEFRA, we have a very good mix of locally grown and sustainable food supply chains and trade with countries that is secure for the long term. So I think if we always need to have that balance. You heard from one of the speakers on the video there that actually we don't want 100% self-sufficiency because it actually makes us a bit more vulnerable. So we always have to be making sure that we've got that balance right.
But 15% of fruit grown in this country, that's a bit worrying, isn't it?
Although very good fruit grown around Selborne and Blackpool and elsewhere.
This is a local programme, excellent.
Elsewhere in Hampshire. But look, I mean, it's absolutely right that people are more conscious of this, and I think Ukraine and Putin's invasion really sent shockwaves through our country and other countries, and probably thinking about food security more than in the past. We did put the Food Security Index in place and the triennial food security report into law, and that's all part of the infrastructure. There will be some things which we're not going to be self-sufficient in because we just don't have the climate for growing them. But we should make sure that more of our food requirement we can rely on ourselves. In the same way that we've come to realise that energy security is incredibly important when you get in some of this global disruption. And we're blessed with having some of the finest food and some of the highest, really the highest food production standards in the world.
Yeah, part of the problem is that we don't have a strategy. England is the only part of the UK that doesn't have a food strategy, a food and farming strategy. That's why the Liberal Democrats have been calling for a comprehensive food and farming strategy for the whole of the UK. And the Conservative Party, to their credit, actually commissioned a fantastic report by Henry Dimbleby. The problem is they then put it in a drawer and never acted on it. So we've already got a blueprint here.
Perhaps because it's too difficult.
But I'm going to push back on that because we have introduced a 25-year farming plan, which is welcomed by the NFU. So we are looking at that long-term. I wonder if they still welcomed it the day after you cut SFI with no notice. I mean, that's the problem.
Sorry, cut what?
The Sustainable Farming Initiative payments. That's the problem, is that it's easy to give with one and take with another.
But it's coming in the context of £5 billion to farmers over the next 2 years. It's coming in the context of work to bring in more seasonal workers to support them. There's a whole range of things that are doing that fit into this farming strategy. So one or two things, of course, we're going to find things that farmers don't like, but we're looking to the long term.
One or two things, right? I mean, cutting the Sustainable Farming Initiative dead with literally zero notice and introducing the family farm tax. I mean, these are not trivial little things.
And some of them enormous things. But you can't call it the family farm tax when 7% of the people who get agricultural farm relief get 25% of that.
Let's stick to food production for a second. I mean, the other thing that happened was the money for sustainable initiatives just ran out. So the people who come in through the door first were given it, and everybody else was told, oh, sorry, you have to wait till next year.
And this is a symptom of a lot of what we've inherited as a government. There were lots of promises made by the last government, but there was not money set aside to do it. And we don't think that it is wise or financially sustainable or responsible to continue things that we just can't afford as a nation.
I think the problem if you're a farmer, though, is that you need to be able to think long term. And actually, as Damien mentioned, the SFI, the Sustainable Farming Initiative, being cut with no notice when, actually DEFRA had said they'd give 6 weeks. Farmers already had their next year crops in the ground, and now they're being told they don't know what to do with that.
The one group of people who really know about planning ahead, aren't they? You've got an agricultural area as well.
100%.
And what could the government do? Give them a hand. You're supposed to be friendly if in opposition.
Absolutely. And Jess has mentioned the farming budget, between between Liberal Democrats and AFU, we think it's somewhere between 1.5 and 2 billion underfunded. So you've got to have the right amount of money in there. You've got to have SFI, or whatever the replacement is going to be, has got to be guaranteed, and it's got to be guaranteed for long term so farmers can make plans. You've also got to make sure that farmers are getting a fair price at the gate. You know, I know we've talked a bit about renewable energy already, but I don't know a farmer who got into farming because they want to grow solar panels.
Yes.
They're growing solar panels because farming is so incredibly difficult to make a living. So until we make farming a sustainable living, you're going to see people pivoting to other.
And do you think
industries.
supermarkets are part of the problem? Just quickly, you say 100%.
And this is what I hear from the farming community
Yeah.
as well, that prices are pushed so low that it makes it not sustainable for them.
Right. Well, it's tough decisions. Someone has to take them.